Aisha never imagined she'd hear her father whisper the words that would shatter her entire world. "Sweetheart, a man wants to buy you." The sentence replayed in her mind as she stood at the window of their cramped Atlanta apartment, watching heavy rain smear the city into a gray blur. The sky looked bruised, just like her life had felt these past few months. Every raindrop seemed to echo the chaos she was drowning in. "Aisha?" Her mother's frail voice trembled from the next room. She forced a smile she didn't feel. "Coming, Mom." Lena Hayes lay curled under thin blankets, her face worn down by months of illness they had no money to treat. The room smelled like medicine in sleepless nights. Aisha set a warm cup of tea beside her and stroked her cold hand. "Where's Dad?" she asked softly. Lena swallowed hard. "Talking to those people again, the ones he borrowed from. I begged him not to take their money. I told him it would ruin us." Aisha hugged her mother's thin shoulders, fighting the bitter fear climbing up her throat. She remembered the day her father came home with a thick envelope of cash, money they desperately needed for Lena's surgery. For a moment, it felt like a miracle, but miracles from loan sharks always came with a price. A violent crash shook the apartment door. Marcus Hayes stumbled in, drenched from the rain, his face gray, his hands trembling. Aisha's heart sank instantly. "Dad? What happened?" He dropped into a chair and covered his face. Silence. Then a broken whisper. "We have 1 week." Lena gasped. Aisha froze. 1 week to repay everything, Marcus continued. "If we don't, they'll take the apartment." "That's not the worst part," he added, voice cracking. Aisha's blood went cold. "What do you mean, not the worst part?" They offered another option." He lifted his eyes to her, eyes full of shame and defeat. "Their boss, a very wealthy man, he saw you once. He said he'd erase the full debt if you marry him." Aisha felt the floor disappear beneath her. "Marry? A stranger? Dad, no!" "They said if we don't accept," he whispered, "your mother might not live long enough to even see next month." Aisha's breathing turned shallow, her world constricting. She was trapped, cornered by desperation, fear, and the unbearable weight of responsibility. Somewhere outside, thunder cracked violently, as if mirroring the decision she would soon have to make. Before the night ends, Aisha will learn the terrifying identity of the man who wants her, not for love, but for something far more unsettling. Aisha barely slept that night. The rain had stopped, but the storm inside her hadn't. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the cracked wall as her father's words replayed over and over. "A stranger wants to erase our debt if I marry him." It felt unreal, like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. By mid-morning, the apartment was silent, except for her mother's shallow breathing. Aisha forced herself to get up, wash her face, and braid her hair with trembling hands. She needed clarity, answers, anything that could anchor her in this madness. Then someone knocked. Not the type of knock that asked permission. A sharp, commanding knock that felt like a warning. A tall man in an immaculate charcoal suit stood in their doorway. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not in a worn-down apartment building that smelled of damp carpet and old paint. "Miss Hayes?" he asked, his voice smooth but cold. "I'm Darius Cole, Mr. Thorne's personal representative." Aisha's stomach tightened. Thorne. That was the name her father had whispered in fear. Darius stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The polished shoes, the expensive watch, the controlled confidence, it all screamed power and danger. He handed her a thick envelope. Mr. Thorne asked me to deliver this, instructions, compensation, and a token of good faith. Aisha opened the envelope with stiff fingers. Inside was $10,000, crisp bills wrapped neatly, and a printed photo. A mansion? No, a palace. Acres of land, towering columns, wide balconies, and windows that gleamed like carved diamonds. "This is where you would live," Darius said calmly, watching her reaction. "Mr. Thorne ensures comfort, safety, stability." "And what does he get?" Aisha asked, her voice sharp despite the fear twisting inside her. Darius hesitated just a moment too long. "Companionship. He is in poor health and requires a dedicated partner." "A partner?" she echoed. "You mean a wife?" "Yes," Darius confirmed. "A lawful, binding, public marriage. In exchange, your family will be protected for life." Aisha felt sick. "He doesn't even know me." "He knows enough," Darius replied. "He saw you once, months ago, and he has been, interested." Her skin crawled. Darius softened his tone slightly. "Miss Hayes, you are not being forced, but your situation leaves few options. Mr. Thorne wishes to meet you tomorrow. He insists." Aisha closed her eyes. Her mother needed surgery. Her father was drowning in guilt. Time was running out. Tomorrow, she would step into the world of a man powerful enough to buy her future. When Aisha finally meets Elias Thorne, nothing could prepare her for the mask he wears, nor the reason he refuses to take it off. The next day arrived far too quickly. At exactly 3 p.m., a sleek black sedan rolled to a stop outside Aisha's building. It looked so out of place on their cracked, pothole-filled street that neighbors peeked through curtains just to stare. Aisha stepped outside wearing the only nice dress she owned, a burgundy one she saved for rare occasions. Her hands shook as she smoothed the fabric. She felt like she was walking toward a destiny she didn't choose. Darius opened the car door for her. "Mr. Thorne is expecting you." The ride was long and strangely silent. Buildings shifted into suburbs into winding roads lined with ancient trees. By the time they reached the towering iron gates of the estate, Aisha's pulse was hammering so hard she could barely breathe. The car rolled through the gates, revealing grounds so enormous they looked like a private park. Sculpted hedges, marble fountains, gleaming pathways. It was another world entirely. "This place," Aisha whispered. "Mr. Thorne prefers privacy," Darius replied, unbothered by her awe. Inside, the mansion was even more overwhelming. Marble floors gleamed like mirrors, paintings covered every wall, and chandeliers so large they looked like fallen constellations hung above her. Darius led her up an ornate staircase, down a long corridor, and finally stopped at a large oak door. "He's inside," he said. "Go in when you're ready." Ready? She doubted she'd ever be ready. Still, she pushed the heavy door open. A vast library unfolded before her, floor-to-ceiling shelves, tall windows, and in the center, a man seated in a leather armchair with his back toward her. "Mr. Thorne," Darius announced before closing the door behind her. Silence. Aisha swallowed. "Hello?" she said softly. "Come closer," a deep voice commanded. She took a few slow steps until she could see him clearly, and her breath caught. Elias Thorne wore a half mask. Not a delicate masquerade mask, but a solid metal-like design covering the entire left side of his face. Only his right eye, sharp, piercing, strangely alive, was visible. His left arm rested motionless on the armchair. His left leg appeared stiff, his posture strained. He wasn't simply wealthy. He was broken. "Don't be alarmed," Elias said dryly, noticing her reaction. "The mask is less disturbing than what lies beneath." Aisha forced herself to meet his gaze. Why me?" His visible eyes softened. "Because you're the only person I've seen who wasn't drowning in greed." He tapped his cane lightly. "Sit. We have much to discuss." And as she slowly sat down, Aisha realized something chilling. This man didn't want a wife. He wanted something far more complicated. Before their conversation ends, Elias Thorne will make Aisha an offer that sounds like mercy, but feels like a gilded trap she may never escape. Aisha sat down across from Elias Thorne, trying to quiet the tremor in her hands. His presence filled the room, not with strength, but with a heavy, unsettling gravity. He looked like a man carved from exhaustion and secrets. "I assume you have questions," he said, adjusting the mask slightly. The metal caught the light, casting a shadow over the half of his face he kept hidden. Aisha inhaled. "You asked for me specifically? Why?" "Because," Elias replied, leaning heavily on his cane as he shifted toward her, "you are someone who acts out of obligation, not ambition. You take care of your family, you sacrifice. That tells me you won't betray me." She stiffened. "Betray you? I don't even know you." "No," he agreed, "but you will. I want honesty between us, brutal honesty." He paused. "I am dying, Miss Hayes. My doctors estimate a year. 2, if luck decides to humor me." Aisha felt her throat tighten. Elias continued, voice calm, almost indifferent. "My body fails a little more each day. The stroke damaged the left side. I cannot rely on those close to me. I cannot rely on anyone." "So you want a nurse?" she asked, bitterness creeping in. "A wife," he corrected firmly. "A legal spouse. Someone who will share meals with me, speak to me, sit beside me in the evenings so I do not waste what time I have left alone." Aisha looked at him, really looked. Behind the mask and harsh tone was a man terrified of dying in silence. "And in return?" she whispered. "In return," Elias said, "your mother receives immediate top-tier medical care. Your family's debt disappears permanently. Your future is secured." He lifted a folder from the table and slid it toward her. "When my time ends, everything becomes yours." Aisha felt the air drain from her lungs. Everything. The mansion, the wealth, his empire. It didn't feel like a gift. It felt like a contract she didn't want to sign. "And if I refuse?" she asked. Elias tapped his cane, his gaze sharp. "Then the debt remains, and the money already given for your mother's treatment will need to be returned immediately. Her pulse spiked. You said this was my choice. It is, he answered, but choices often come with consequences. He turned his face toward the window, the mask gleaming in the fading light. You may walk away, he said softly, but you know your answer already. And horrifyingly, she did. The next day, Aisha gives Elias her conditions, but one of them forces him to reveal the unsettling truth behind the mask he never removes.
Aisha didn't sleep again. She spent the night pacing the confines of her tiny bedroom, haunted by Elias Thorne's proposal. His voice echoed in her mind, "You know your answer already." By sunrise, she realized he was right. The decision wasn't really hers. Her mother's failing health, her father's crushing guilt, the debt hanging over them like a noose, every road led to the same place. But if she was going to sacrifice her entire future, she refused to walk into it powerless. When she returned to the mansion the next afternoon, Elias was already waiting in the same library, his posture stiff, one hand trembling faintly from weakness. Aisha walked in, chin lifted. "I'll consider your offer, but only if you agree to my conditions." A long silence. Then Elias nodded slowly. "Very well. Name them." "First," Aisha said, keeping her voice steady, "my mother's treatment starts immediately. Not a promise, not paperwork, real hospitalization, real doctors, starting today." "Done," he said without hesitation. "Second," Aisha continued, "the debt my father owes vanishes. Not delayed, not renegotiated, completely erased." Elias frowned slightly, but nodded again. "It is already in motion." Aisha inhaled. "Third, I want to meet you again before the wedding, without assistance, without pressure, just you and me." For the first time, something in Elias's expression shifted. Tension, uncertainty, maybe even dread. "That," he said slowly, "may not be possible." "Then neither is this marriage," she replied sharply. Elias tightened his grip on the cane. The room seemed to contract around them. He studied her face for several long seconds before exhaling. "Very well," he said. "You may see me again before the wedding. But I warn you, what you see may not be pleasant." Aisha frowned. "You mean your illness?" "Not only that." He reached up and touched the edge of his mask, the first time he had ever seen him do so. For a brief second it looked like he might pull it off, but instead he let his hand fall back to his lap. "Some things are easier to bear when hidden," Elias murmured. "But if you insist, you may look upon me without it. Once." Aisha's stomach tightened. What was he hiding so urgently? "When?" she asked. "Tomorrow," Elias said. "I'll send the car. And you will see the truth you think you want." His single visible eye held hers, haunted. "Warning. Just remember," he added softly, "once you see what lies beneath, your decision may change." Aisha swallowed hard. She wasn't sure if he meant it as a threat or a plea. Tomorrow, Elias will remove the mask, but what Aisha discovers is far more disturbing than a scarred face. It's the secret that shaped his entire broken life.
The next day, Aisha could barely swallow a sip of tea. Her nerves were tangled, her stomach twisted. She wasn't afraid of scars, not physical ones. What unsettled her was Elias's tone the day before, the way he'd said, "Once you see what lies beneath, your decision may change. What could be so terrible that a man of his wealth and pride hid behind metal instead of honesty? At exactly 2 o'clock, the same black sedan arrived. Aisha stepped in, her palms damp with fear, her heart beating so loudly she was sure the driver could hear it. The ride felt longer than the first time. Every turn tightened the knot in her chest. Inside the mansion, Darius appeared instantly. "Mr. Thorne is waiting in the east study," he said. "He instructed that you go alone." Aisha walked down the quiet corridor, her footsteps echoing like whispers of doubt. When she entered the study, Elias was sitting near a large window, sunlight breaking across his figure. He didn't turn when she entered. "You're here," he said softly. Aisha stepped forward. "You told me the truth might change everything. I want to see it anyway." Elias exhaled, a slow, heavy sound filled with resignation. He lifted a trembling hand toward the side of his face and unhooked the mask. Metal scraped softly. Then he turned to her. Aisha's breath caught. It wasn't just the paralysis. It wasn't just the scars. It was something deeper, something older. The entire left side of his face was twisted from the stroke, yes, but beneath that, she could see remnants of an injury far older. A long burn scar, faded but unmistakable, running from his temple down his cheek. Tissue that had healed unevenly. A faint imprint of metal, like a grate or a heated object, etched into his skin. Aisha stepped closer without thinking. "Elias, what happened to you?" He held her gaze with only one functioning eye. He said, "My past happened, and part of it never let me go." He looked away, almost ashamed. "This scar is 30 years old. The stroke only worsened the disfigurement. I wore the masks so no one had to pretend. I wore it because people can't hide their disgust." Aisha shook her head, stunned, not by his appearance, but by the raw pain in his voice. "Elias, I'm not disgusted." He blinked, surprised. "You should be." "I'm not." For a moment, something fragile flickered in his expression. Hope, maybe. Then the door burst open. Darius stood there, breathless. "Sir, there's a situation you need to be aware of immediately." Elias stiffened. What now? Darius hesitated before speaking. "It's your brother. He's arrived, and he's demanding to see you both." Aisha's pulse spiked. Elias's brother won't just bring trouble. He'll reveal a truth that destroys the fragile trust Aisha thought she was beginning to feel. A shadow of irritation crossed Elias's face the moment Darius mentioned his brother. His fingers tightened around the handle of his cane, his jaw setting with a tension Aisha had never seen before. "My brother doesn't come here without a motive," Elias muttered. "And his motives are never good." Aisha followed as Elias slowly rose from his chair. He refused her help, using his cane to steady himself as they made their way through the echoing hall. The mansion felt colder, as if even the walls recoiled from the name Silas Thorne. They reached the grand sitting room. A man was standing near the fireplace, swirling a glass of expensive whiskey like he owned the place. Silas Thorne. He looked like Elias, same sharp cheekbones, same eyes, except where Elias carried sorrow, Silas carried arrogance. He was polished, charming on the surface, venom underneath. When Silas noticed them, he smirked. Well, well, the great Elias Thorne finally emerges, and with his bride-to-be. Aisha felt the insult embedded in his tone, but before she could respond, Silas's gaze swept over her slowly, calculatingly. So this is the young woman replacing all that loneliness money couldn't fix. Enough, Elias snapped. Why are you here? Silas took a slow sip of his drink. Can't a brother visit? He set the glass down with a soft click, especially after hearing you're in such fragile condition. Aisha felt Elias stiffen beside her. I'm managing, Elias said coldly. Managing? Silas laughed. You can barely walk without that cane, and now you bring a stranger into your will, into your home, into your legacy? She's not a stranger, Elias cut in sharply, and my will is none of your concern. Silas raised an eyebrow. Oh, then you haven't told her yet. Told me what? Aisha asked. Silas turned toward her with mock sympathy. Sweet girl, do you know that if Elias dies tomorrow, every penny, every mansion, every business, every luxury legally goes to me? Elias's breath hitched. Aisha froze. What? Silas shrugged casually. He never updated his will, hasn't for years. I'm still the sole heir. Aisha felt the ground shift beneath her. Silas leaned close. So tell me, my dear, what exactly are you getting out of this arrangement? Because if my brother's heart gives out tonight, you walk away with nothing. Silas, stop, Elias growled. Why? Silas sneered. She should know the truth. Everyone should. Aisha's mind spun. Elias had promised her security. He had sworn she would be cared for. But Silas's words pierced deeper than she expected. Was she marrying a dying man? For nothing? Aisha confronts Elias, and what he confesses next will change the entire course of their marriage before it even begins.
The moment Silas left the room, his smug laughter still echoing down the hallway, the silence between Aisha and Elias collapsed into something sharp and suffocating. Aisha turned to him slowly. Is it true? Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with betrayal. Is your brother really the one who inherits everything? Elias closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength he didn't have. Aisha, I was going to explain. When? She demanded. Before or after I signed away my life? Before or after you handed me a marriage certificate tied with a lie? It wasn't a lie, Elias said quietly, leaning heavily on his cane. I meant every word. I asked the notary to prepare a new will. I instructed Darius to arrange it. But the notary was away, and then everything happened so fast. Aisha stepped back. So right now, right this second, if you die, Silas gets everything? Yes, Elias admitted, his voice raw. But I never planned to leave it that way. That should have reassured her. Instead, it made her chest tighten painfully. So you plan to leave me all this money, even though we barely know each other? Elias nodded. Because you weren't here to use me. Because you weren't chasing what everyone else chased. Because you came for your family, not for profit. Aisha swallowed. And how do you know Silas won't try to stop you from changing your will? Elias's expression hardened. Because the will isn't the only document that can secure your future. I intended to put a trust in your name regardless. Silas cannot touch that. The admission stunned her. So he had thought about her future? He had taken steps she didn't know about, but still, I didn't want money between us. Not as a chain, not as a condition. Neither did I, Elias said, stepping closer. His voice wavered. But I wanted to leave something meaningful behind. Someone meaningful. And you gave me something I thought I'd lost a long time ago. Aisha frowned. What's that? Hope, he said simply. The word hit her harder than anger ever could. Elias reached for her hand, not demanding, not assuming, just offering. Aisha, he murmured, I can change the documents today if you wish, completely, or I can leave everything exactly as you want. Just tell me. Aisha stared at him, her heart aching with the weight of choices she never asked for. But before she could answer, a sound echoed down the corridor, running footsteps, urgent. Then a voice shouted, Elias, something's happened. Elias and Aisha froze. The news racing toward them will not only threaten Elias's fragile health, but it will unravel the darkness hiding inside this mansion's walls. Darius appeared in the doorway, breathless, his face pale as if he'd seen a ghost. For a man usually as composed as marble, the sight was unnerving. What happened? Elias demanded, gripping his cane as though it were the only thing keeping him upright. It's your accounts, sir, Darius stammered. A large transfer was initiated, one you didn't authorize. Aisha's heart lurched. Elias's grip tightened until his knuckles whitened. How large? He asked, voice low. 7 million. Darius swallowed. Sent to an offshore account, under your signature. I didn't sign anything, Elias snapped. I know, Darius said, shifting nervously, but the banking system shows the digital copy of your handwriting. Aisha stepped forward. Elias never saw any documents today. Darius hesitated. The bank is demanding confirmation. If not resolved immediately, the funds will be unrecoverable. Elias turned, breathing harder now. Bring me the document. Darius nodded and hurried to fetch it. Aisha looked at Elias. His face, both the scarred and the functioning side, had drained of all color. You shouldn't get worked up, she whispered. I'm not worked up, Elias said, though he clearly was. I'm furious. Do you think Silas? Yes, Elias didn't hesitate. And if he forged my signature once, he'll do worse. Aisha's stomach twisted. Silas wasn't just greedy, he was dangerous, the type of man who smiled while sharpening the knife. Darius returned with the printed transfer authorization. Aisha's breath caught when she saw the bottom. The signature looked almost identical to Elias's. Almost. But Aisha had watched him sign documents earlier. There was always a sharp flourish at the tail end of his last name. A flourish missing here. This is fake, Aisha said urgently. Look at the last letter. You never sign like this. Elias nodded slowly. Darius, who had access to my files today? The room shrank. Darius didn't answer immediately. Darius, Elias repeated, voice shaking now, not with fear but with betrayal. Who went near my office? Darius's eyes darted away. Silas asked me to gather some old financial files earlier. I stepped out for a few minutes. When I returned, he was looking through your desk. Aisha inhaled sharply. So he forged your signature? Elias gritted his teeth. And he did it in my own home. Darius cleared his throat. Sir, Silas is still on the property. Elias tried to stand straighter, leaning heavily on his cane. Aisha, stay close to me. My brother isn't finished. Before she could respond, a voice echoed from the hallway. Still talking about me, Elias? Silas stepped into the room, smiling like a wolf who'd finally cornered his prey. Silas's next move will cross a line Aisha never imagined and force Elias into a choice that could cost him everything.
Silas strolled into the room with the relaxed confidence of a man who believed nothing could touch him. His suit was perfectly tailored, his smile razor sharp. He looked like success, but reeked of rot. Elias straightened, gripping his cane so tightly his knuckles turned white. "You forged my signature. You stole from me." Silas tilted his head innocently. "Stole? Oh, brother, such an ugly word. I simply redirected what was always meant to be mine." "That money wasn't yours," Aisha snapped. Silas's gaze slid to her, amused. "Ah, yes, the new bride. Tell me, dear, how does it feel to be tied to a dying man who won't even leave you a penny unless he signs some paperwork he may not live to finish?" Aisha stiffened. "Silas," Elias warned, "leave her out of this." "Why?" Silas smirked. "She's the entire center of this little drama. Do you think I'm blind? You brought her here because you're afraid of dying alone." He leaned in closer. "And because you can't stand the idea of me inheriting everything." "What you inherit is irrelevant," Elias said. "You have no right to take what isn't yours." "No right," Silas laughed. "Father always said I deserved more. And you, weak, sentimental, you wasted opportunities. You let love ruin you. I won't." The word struck something deep in Elias. His jaw clenched. "You know nothing about love." "Oh, but I do," Silas said, softly, almost cruelly. "I remember Celeste and Zoe." The temperature in the room dropped. Aisha felt Elias sway slightly, and she moved closer without thinking. Silas continued, voice dripping venom. "Zoe didn't want to see you, Elias. She said you scared her. She said you were more ghost than father." Aisha felt Elias's entire body shudder. His cane slipped, and she grabbed his arm just in time. "You're lying," Aisha hissed. Silas grinned. "Believe what you want, but I was there. I saw them. I heard the things you'll never unhear." Elias sank into the nearest chair, breathing unevenly, his skin cold. No, he wasn't fine. Within minutes, Elias's condition collapses, and Aisha will be forced to make a decision that could save his life or destroy everything he's tried to protect. Aisha had never seen Elias like this. His breaths were short and ragged, each one sounding like it scraped painfully through his chest. The hand not gripping his cane trembled uncontrollably. His face, already drawn from illness, had gone a frightening shade of gray. "Elias," Aisha whispered, steadying him with both hands. "Stay with me. Look at me." He tried to speak, but only a strangled gasp came out. "Darius," Aisha shouted, her voice echoing through the hallway. Darius appeared in seconds, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm. "What happened?" "He pushed himself too far," Aisha snapped. "Call the doctor, now." Darius darted away. Aisha stayed by Elias's side, gripping his hand until the shaking eased slightly. His voice was a faint whisper. "Aisha, promise me. Whatever happens, don't let Silas near this house again." "I won't," she vowed. "I'll protect you." His eyes closed, exhaustion overtaking him. Aisha slowly stood as the doctor ordered everyone except Esther to leave the room. She lingered at the doorway, looking back once more at Elias's fragile form. Silas had nearly pushed him to the edge, and Aisha knew now. This wasn't just family greed. It was a threat. Tomorrow, Aisha discovers a hidden message that reveals Silas's plan and the horrifying role Darius might be playing behind Elias's back.
Aisha barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Elias struggling to breathe, saw the fear in his one clear eye, saw the way his body had crumpled under the weight of Silas's cruelty. By dawn, she made a decision. She would not let Silas crawl any deeper into Elias's life. When she slipped quietly into the hallway, the mansion felt wrong, too still, too watchful. Esther was already awake, organizing linens in the corridor, her brow knitted with worry. "How is he?" Aisha whispered. "Stable," Esther replied softly. "The doctor gave him sedatives. He'll sleep for several hours." Aisha nodded, relieved, but not at ease. "Esther," she said slowly, "do you think Silas is finished after what he did yesterday?" The housekeeper hesitated. "Men like Silas don't stop until they get what they want. And he wants everything." Aisha's stomach tightened. She couldn't shake the image of Silas's satisfied smirk. She headed toward Elias's office, determined to check if any documents had been tampered with. The door was slightly ajar, not fully open, but not closed either. She froze. Someone was inside. Aisha pressed herself against the wall, listening. The faint sound of paper shuffling, a drawer sliding open, a familiar voice muttering under its breath. Darius. Aisha's pulse spiked. He wasn't supposed to be anywhere near Elias's legal documents, not after yesterday's forged transfer. Aisha stepped into the doorway. "Darius?" He jolted, immediately slamming the desk drawer shut. "Mrs. Hayes?" He cleared his throat. "You startled me." Aisha's gaze moved to the desk. "What are you doing in Elias's private office?" Darius forced a tight smile. "Sir asked me to reorganize some files, old financials, nothing important." But Aisha saw something he didn't expect her to notice. A folded piece of paper partially tucked under his hand. Her name was written on it. "May I see that?" she asked. Darius's expression twitched. It's irrelevant. Then there shouldn't be a problem showing me." After a long pause, he handed it reluctantly. Aisha unfolded the paper, and the breath left her lungs. It was a message, handwritten, in Elias's uneven script, but it wasn't addressed to her. It was addressed to the lawyer. "If anything happens to me, investigate Silas. He has threatened my life before, and I fear he may be conspiring with someone inside the house." Below it, a second line had been added in weaker handwriting. "I no longer trust Darius." Aisha felt the blood drain from her face. "You had this in your possession, and you didn't give it to Elias? You didn't call the lawyer?" Darius's jaw tightened. His silence was louder than any confession. Before she could react, footsteps echoed down the hallway, heavy, slow, frightening. Silas. Silas has arrived with a demand that leaves Aisha no choice but to confront the truth about who, in this mansion, is truly loyal and who is ready to kill. Silas's footsteps echoed through the corridor like a slow, mocking countdown. Aisha folded the note quickly and tucked it into her sleeve just as he appeared in the doorway. He paused when he saw her and Darius together in Elias's office. "Well?" Silas drawled, his gaze sliding over both of them like oil. "Isn't this interesting?" Aisha forced herself to stand still, her heart beat thudding painfully. Darius, however, stiffened like a man caught stealing silverware. Silas stepped farther into the room, hands clasped behind his back. "I came to see Elias.
But since he's resting, I suppose I'll have to settle for conversation. Aisha swallowed hard. Elias can't be disturbed. The doctor said, "Oh, don't worry. I don't intend to kill him today." The way he said it, light, joking, yet suffocating, made Aisha's skin crawl. He turned his attention to Darius. "You," Silas said, his tone shifting into something colder. "We need to talk." Darius's Adam's apple bobbed. "About—" "Oh, don't play stupid," Silas murmured, stepping closer. "The transfer didn't go through. I know you messed up somewhere." Aisha felt the air freeze. So it was true. Darius wasn't just careless, he was involved. Darius forced a stiff smile. "You told me to sign as him. I did. The bank flagged it, that's all." "And did you destroy the paperwork Elias left for his lawyer?" Silas asked softly. Darius shot a quick glance toward Aisha. "Too quick," Silas noticed. "Ah," Silas said slowly, his lips curling. "So you've already shown her more than you should have." Aisha clenched her fist. "I know everything. The forged signature, the conspiracy, Elias's warning, all of it." Silas looked genuinely amused. "My dear, you don't know half of it." He took another step toward her, and for a moment, Aisha thought she saw something monstrous flicker behind his charming facade. "Do you think Elias will survive long enough to fix his will?" Silas asked quietly. "Because I assure you, time is not on his side." Aisha's breath hitched. "If you touch him—" "Oh, please," Silas laughed. "The old man is hanging by threads. I barely have to lift a finger." He turned sharply toward Darius. "And for you, I expect you in the East Wing in 5 minutes. We have unfinished business." Darius blanched. "Silas, wait!" 5 minutes, Silas repeated, his voice dropping into something dark and final. He left the office, footsteps fading. Aisha rounded on Darius instantly. "Tell me the truth," she whispered fiercely. "Is he planning something? Something worse?" Darius looked at her with a mixture of fear and regret. "There's something you don't understand. Silas doesn't want to wait for Elias to die." Aisha's blood turned to ice. "What do you mean?" Darius swallowed hard. "He wants it to happen tonight." With Elias's life on the line, Aisha must decide who she can trust, and the truth will force her into a confrontation that changes everything. Aisha felt the world tilt beneath her. "Tonight?" she whispered, her voice barely holding together. Darius nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. "Silas said, the longer Elias lives, the harder it is to secure the inheritance. He plans to make it look like his heart simply gave out." Aisha steadied her breath. "Then help me stop him." Darius stepped back. I can't. Silas will destroy me." Aisha stared at him, her voice turning icy. "He already has. Elias trusted you. If Silas succeeds, what do you think he'll do with loose ends like you?" The truth hit Darius hard. She saw the fear shift, reforming into something close to desperation. "What do you want me to do?" he whispered. "Stay close to Silas. Pretend you're still on his side, but keep me informed. If he moves toward Elias's room, you warn me immediately."
Darius hesitated, then nodded. When he left, Aisha rushed down the hall toward Elias's room. Esther stood at the door like a guard dog. "Where are you going?" she whispered urgently. "To protect him. Silas is coming tonight." Esther's eyes widened with horror. "Dear God." "We can't panic," Aisha whispered. "We need a plan." Together, they quietly rearranged the room, moving the medical cart, dimming lights, ensuring nothing Silas could tamper with was accessible. Aisha stayed at Elias's bedside, her hand resting on his. He stirred slightly. "Aisha." "Shh." She brushed his hair gently. "Just rest." But the peace didn't last long. Footsteps approached. Slow, heavy, intentional. Silas. Aisha stood quickly and stepped between him and the bed. "Well," Silas murmured, leaning against the door frame. "How touching. But you're in my way." "You're not coming in." Her voice did not shake. "You really think you can stop me?" "Not alone," she said. He frowned. Then Darius emerged behind him. "Silas, don't do this." Silas turned, betrayal flashing across his face. "You useless traitor." Before he could finish, Esther swung the heavy emergency lamp down with surprising strength. It struck Silas's shoulder hard enough to send him staggering. He cursed and reached for Esther, but Darius held him back. In the chaos, Aisha pressed the emergency alarm, alerting security staff stationed outside the mansion. Within seconds, 2 guards rushed in. Silas's eyes filled with fury as they pulled him away. "This isn't over. You think Elias can keep his fortune now? You think—" The guards dragged him out before he could finish. Silence settled back again. Darius sank into a chair, exhausted. Esther leaned against the wall, trembling. Aisha exhaled shakily. Elias opened his eyes weakly. "Elisha, what happened?" She took his hand with a trembling smile. "You're safe, and you're not alone anymore." He squeezed her hand back. For the first time, Elias Thorne looked at her not with sadness or fear, but with gratitude and something that looked a lot like hope.